Thank
Yep.
you.
Could the secretary have one too, please,
Of course.
Mr. Weaver? If you have an extra,
I do.
I'd appreciate it, thank you.
You're welcome.
Which is the newer one?
What's his name? His name.
I'll jump up here to the front row.
I don't know.
You
I didn't think it was
wanna
changed, was it?
take there.
Oh, I don't know, I didn't really look.
I don't
And
think
I
it
brought
was.
one and there was one here.
I don't think so.
All right.
So,
Supposed to go
Peg
back.
Tynan asked me to join you folks this evening just to give you an update on performance for the fiscal year, the most recent fiscal year. So we're looking back from July 1st of last year through June of this year. And so I provided you with some performance numbers here, which is the top page. We manage two accounts for you. One of them is the cemetery trust. One is a more general trust that we manage for you. And these two pages show you the general performance over that time frame. The trust fund, the larger of the two accounts, had a return over that time span of about 5%, which I highlighted, which is tracking the benchmark just below it. If you recall, in the fourth quarter of last year, we had a 20% decline in the stock market. So it's just a reminder that even though we have some pullbacks, some very significant pullbacks in the market from time to time, you can still get a positive return if you keep your funds invested over the long term. So, second page is the cemetery fund. Again, similar return, 5.7%. That makes sense considering they're managed the same way in terms of allocation. It's about a 50-50 allocation between both stocks and bonds. Any questions on that information? And just moving along, I wanted to just give you an update on how funds have done year to date, just quickly. So I've provided you with a couple of statements, year-to-date statements here for both funds. The first one being the trust fund, the larger trust fund. And on page 2, you'll see that the trust fund has done very well. Rate of return in your bottom right-hand corner is 12% year-to-date. We have a 3% cash position, 53% equities, and the remaining allocations in bonds. This is typical for a trust. You want to manage it for perpetuity. You want to have it keep going and generate some income plus some growth. So that's why there's a balanced objective here of about 50-50. We started the year at about 1.6 million. It's now just under 1.8 million. So in dollar terms, it's done very well, almost $200,000 increase for the funds. Page 3, page 4 will give you some information on how we invest. We use mutual funds and bond funds to manage the town's money. We make sure that we buy broad-based investments, so we typically don't buy individual stocks when we're managing municipal money. We prefer to use mutual funds so that we don't have headline risk in the portfolio. So we have funds here that invest in all markets. We have large cap, we have small cap, we have mid cap, and of course international markets as well. So keeping our allocations broad, making sure that we have exposure to all those markets. And page 4, we have a list of bonds or CDs that we purchase for the town, plus some bond funds in here as well to manage risk, to hedge interest rate risk at home. So we have a global bond fund here, and we have an inflation protected fund which also manages that interest rate risk a little bit. So generally we've kept our investments with bonds pretty short term, considering rates are very low. If rates were to go up again, bond prices would go down. So we generally keep our investments under 10 years, but really our duration is probably closer to 5 on this portfolio. So it's a very conservative bond portfolio. I generally don't buy corporate bonds, for instance, because I don't want to have that risk in the portfolio of default. We know what happened to Lehman Brothers back in '08, Bear Stearns. We'd prefer to have CDs where if we keep it under 250,000, then we have that protection from the FDIC. So that's sort of the gist of it there. Can I have any questions?
Yeah, I do have a question.
Yep.
Have we given the bank or the investment advisor any guidelines as to when we might want to have access to use the funds that they're investing on our behalf? They're probably restricted in some way, but
we've not had a conversation like that.
No, I
Did they ever have a conversation?
don't think you've withdrawn from these funds
In years.
in years. So certainly, it's been over the last 9 or 10 years. These funds have done very well, and you have some gains there that you can take at any time. To use.
I don't want to
So.
touch it.
To
That's
give
the
you some-
goal, Bob.
To give you some perspective, when we took over these funds back in '05, I think they were around $1 million. Now combined, they're close to $2 million.
And this fiscal year, they started providing us with the sub-accounting, which was
Right.
really pretty nice. So like within the trust funds, there's a lot of different funds, and that's just part of the work that we're going to be doing with streamlining our accounting program. So just wanted to tell you that.
Yeah.
Matt's doing a good job with that.
Generally speaking, withdrawal rate is typically 4% for, a trust, in that ballpark. So, there's a dollar figure for you, you can think about, and the way they're invested, I think a 4% distribution rate would be prudent or fine to do that, so.
I think we've been very good about protecting our surplus funds.
oh, I'm not saying we shouldn't be. I'm just suggesting it might be useful at some point to look at why we have them and what we're doing with them, whether we ought to tweak the uses a little bit. We probably ought to have that discussion. It may not change a thing, but I think it's
Yeah.
worth having the discussion.
We can do that with the budget committee if you'd like.
We can. Good idea.
Yeah,
We
well,
can-
that's,
Yeah, we can also look at the policy language that we have on file, and, we can look that over as a group and just make sure that we, I'll look at it, and if I have a recommendation in terms of maybe changing some of the language, I can do that for you as well.
I think that needs to be updated,
yeah.
share that with
Just
you.
ratify, yeah.
Yep.
Conservative, we want to be conservative.
Yeah, but we don't want to be losing a lot of opportunity cost either, and you guys don't appear to be doing that. You've got a good mix,
Yeah, they had to.
and our money is relatively safe.
Any other questions? Finally, our quarterly newsletters here at the bottom of the package for you, just some information on markets, sort of a look back, and some education here on an article on behavioral finance, which is something we do a lot of, where we're, helping people, stay in the market long-term, and do not try to time the market and get in and out. And that's what we do for our clients. So that's there for you to read. And that's all.
Any other questions? Mike?
Did you get rid of Ann?
Sorry?
Did you get rid of Ann?
Ann? No, Ann's still with us.
I
Yep.
see she wasn't with you tonight.
She's not with us today. She's recovering from shoulder surgery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks very much, Mike.
I do have one question. When we do have the budget meeting, you have no issue coming, Peg and I will talk with you about that beforehand, but
Sure.
Typically, you do this all over,
I'm sorry?
we're not your only municipality, you
No.
do this all over.
Yeah.
Are we pretty much in line with other municipalities and how they invest?
Yeah.
Or are we more strict, or?
Because they're perpetual funds or trust funds,
Mhm.
I think the 50-50 allocation is appropriate.
Okay.
If we were talking reserve funds, I don't think it would be prudent to commingle them with these funds. I think you might want to be a little more conservative. But I do have towns that they'll take reserves that they're not going to use for 5, 10, 15 years, and they'll put them into a portfolio with 25% stocks, 75% bonds. It's pretty conservative. I'm sure you can lose a little bit of money, but over the long term, if you have funds that you want to make sure they're keeping up with inflation, because the buying power of that money's going down by 2 or 3% every year.
Right.
So, if you're in a CD at 1%, you're kind of losing money every year, the buying power, so.
My other issue that I have, I just had a visit from, as he calls himself, the gravedigger, to have a serious conversation about cemeteries. Oh, John, your favorite subject, I know, I'm so sorry. We wanted to have like a cemetery meeting. Would you be okay to come to that? I mean, I know we're kind of
Sure.
gonna make you meeting happy, but those 2 meetings in the next couple of months would be very useful to have you at those
Be happy
discussions.
to.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Adjustments to the agenda. There's only one I'm aware of, and that's to defer item 11.7 to the first meeting in November.
No,
10.7.
Sorry, did I say 11?
Yes.
My apologies.
10.7.
10.7.
To the which first
November
meeting?
12th?
First meeting in November. That's the gazebo,
Okay.
Katie's gazebo project. Is there a motion?
Remove that.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Citizen comments? Seth?
Sorry to be late. Seth Hall, resident. I was just curious if there was an intention to discuss the potential for a charging station in town this evening. I didn't know if it was going to be an agenda item or not. There's been some correspondence about it.
It is not an agenda item. I was going to make some comments about it during my comments as a select board member.
Great.
But
Okay.
if you have something you'd like to add, please feel free to do so.
Well, should I just describe it briefly, what we've been talking about?
Doesn't hurt.
Why don't I, as many people know, there's an efficiency main program on statewide to deploy electrical vehicle charging stations throughout the state. They've done all the big highways and actually a corridor up through Jackman to Canada by agreement with the ambassador and so forth. They're now starting to do build-outs in a more local basis, in particular on the coastal route, Route 1, where there's a great deficit of charging stations. Basically to make sure that we continue to support tourism is what it basically amounts to. The first round of these things happened in this summer, and I think the select board may have talked briefly about it. I know Bob and I did. And maybe it was just too short a time period to do much. Based on the response and the grants they made in, I think it was July or August maybe, they were looking for more responses. And so they put out another RFP in a very short term, and it's going to be closing on the 12th of November. I think it's a very good idea from an economic development perspective for this town, which is about halfway between Brunswick and Camden, to make it possible to have, for people with EVs to have a pit stop here, not just to charge their cars, but because if they spend half an hour or an hour here, have lunch and so forth, we're supporting local businesses and we're supporting the village in particular. The two places that make sense to put such a place would be on the Route 1 corridor itself, which is a little problematic because there isn't a convenient space there right now. We'd have to find a vendor to be willing to host such a thing. And so I've brought up the subject for conversation, which we may hear more about soon, I hope, that at the Taction building, there's a municipal lot behind the building, and I'm volunteering as a businessman in town to provide the space to do it, the electrical connection to do it at no cost to the town, meaning conduits and the high power feed to this little, I'm sorry, I was gonna bring a picture of it and I didn't get here in time. It's a little thing this high with 2 electrical cords come out that you plug into your car. The reason that's particularly beneficial from the town's perspective, I believe, is the criteria for getting a grant have about 6 points, 5 of which we hit. One is on a major corridor or within a half mile of it, and Route 1 is certainly that. 2 is the distance between similar charging stations, and we're exactly halfway between Bath now and Camden Rockport area, or Rockland area. And there are no charging stations in between. There's one in Damascata, but it's associated with a hotel. It's not open to the public. 3 is, believe it or not, they like to sponsor these things. They weigh heavily in the scoring of your grant application at business places. And we now have the former Taxion building, our Buck Tussle Annex, that has 45 employees in it. That's a lot. And it would be ideally suited, potentially, to promote the growth of EV purchases and use in Maine. And now I'm forgetting the potential, number 4, the potential for a town-private agreement or cooperative grant application weighs very heavily in terms of their scoring, I'm told, and I've forgotten the 5th thing. So I would like to think that perhaps we could do something. I know it's a very short period of time. We only have, 2 weeks or something like that, or almost 3. I am, as a small business person, going to do it anyway. But I think the grant application would be much stronger, and it would be very, very good for Waldeboro to be the first place on Route 1 in this huge stretch to have, it's sort of like our solar array at the landfill, just a vibrant economic development statement to have this. So I hope that perhaps you guys, in your wisdom, maybe working with the Department of Public Works, might agree to do an in-kind landscaping or digging of the hole for the pad, whatever it means. No, I think, direct investment, because I believe the grant can do in-kind donations. And that's pretty much all I have. If anybody has questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Katie?
Not knowing anything about electric cars except for the quiet.
Very quiet.
When you set up a charging station, who pays for the electricity?
Really good question. And in this case, I am donating the electricity.
In front of Taxion or around Taxion?
Behind Taxion.
Yeah.
Probably not, we're gonna have handicap spaces in
But
front.
if someone's on Long Route 1, who's gonna do that?
Well, so each person who sponsors or buys and puts out one of these facilities, whether it's efficiency main or not, gets to make the choice. Is it free? Towns, particularly urban areas, make them free. They put them in parking lots.
How do they work? Do you put in a quarter and plug it in?
No, it's all
or what?
electronic. You can use a debit card or a charge card. More typically, you sign up with something like Charge Point Service or Plug Share.
So the person owns the car, pays for the electricity?
Yes and no, not necessarily. It depends entirely on the person who creates the facility to charge. On the Turnpike, you pay sort of a lot, actually. Down at Kennebunk, for example, and up in Gray. On the Tesla owners don't pay anything because they pay $1 million for their cars and they get free electricity for life.
Well, let's
But
come
normal
down a
people-
little bit to not normal people.
So I think it's, I don't know what the distribution ratio is. I think more of them are not charging anybody anything. You might have to pay to a public garage the parking fee. I know that's the way it is in Salem where my daughter lives. You pay $1.25 an hour for the parking fee, but the electricity is free.
Hypothetically, if there's one out here.
Yep.
So one of the businesses along here would volunteer to have a charging station,
Yes.
and that person would pay the electricity that's used to charge it?
No matter what they would pay, they would always pay the electricity. They would pay to build it, and then they would pay to maintain it, and they would pay the electricity that flowed through it. They may or may not charge you for the electricity. See the difference? It'd be like going to a gas station, pulling out the pump and pumping your gas, and then you didn't pay for the gas. I know that sounds crazy.
Yeah, it does.
Well, the reason I think lots of businesses do it, and the reason I will do it, actually, is the electricity is relatively cheap. You know, I can fill up an electric car for $4 in direct electric cost, just like in your home. So it's really cheap. Some people prefer to make money on it. And I don't fault them for
Somebody's
that.
gotta pay for the electricity somewhere.
When somebody has to pay for the physical thing, you know, it's an electronic device, high tech and all that stuff.
How many people at Taxion have electric cars?
Only one that I know of.
You.
Same one. I just bought one. But I don't charge it there. I have a built-in charger in my home. I put one in my
Well,
barn.
I know that, but, okay,
But the idea is to promote people investing in electric cars, to try to build it. That's the idea.
okay, thank you.
Can we move on? All set?
Thank you very much.
Seth. Any other citizen comments? Okay, select board comments. Katie? Clint?
I was just gonna talk about the leaders forum, but I think probably Julie will. So.
You got, anybody can talk about it.
No,
I don't have a,
You don't want to talk about it?
talk
I'm
about
not
it.
going to. I have other things.
Okay. I have all kinds of things. Well, first of all, last Saturday was the last art walk, Waldeboro Art Walk for the season, for 2019. It was well attended, it was lots of fun, and I'd just like to say a public thank you to Ann and Bob Haywood, who hosted a very nice party and meal for all the participants of the art walk, and I think there were 13 or something like that participants. It was very nice. It's like nice to end on a high note. Yesterday I met a man who just moved here last week to Waldeboro, lives on Main Street, and I asked him what brought him here, and he said the beauty of the area and the arts. There were art walks and art galleries in Waldeboro. That was interesting. He was a man from near Concord, Massachusetts, or had lived there. Second, I'd like to also thank Chief Lash and Officer Nate Jack for sharing their knowledge about public safety to community organizations. I was fortunate that I was able to be in one of those, and I was really impressed with not just their knowledge, but their caring about. The reason they went around to do this was because they care about the people in this area, and that came through loud and clear. And I thought, as I thought about that and thought about them as they were talking to us, that, I really think that's a characteristic of Maine people, that they really do care and they share what they have. And in this case, they were sharing their knowledge with us, so that was very nice. And the last thing I have is, a few weeks ago, I mentioned that I had great respect for Maine's long tradition of open government. And those norms and rules and protocols and all of that I mentioned, I just wanted to say, they all come from this book. And it's very nice. It was put out by Maine Municipal Association. And it's the Maine Municipal Association Municipal Officers Manual. And it's really a wonderful thing to have. It covers lots and lots of different things that municipalities run into. So, that's it for me.
Thank you. I just had a couple things. One is to thank those folks who helped organize Oktoberfest. It was a great event. I think maybe we had a rain day, so we couldn't have it on Saturday. We had to move it to Sunday. Of course, people make plans, and you're imposing on those plans when you have a rain day. But nevertheless, we had a good crowd. There must have been between 150 and 200 people there. And that was a good showing. In particular, I think we want to thank Susan Price and Bill Maxwell and Katharina Scove and Baltimore, her husband. They were very actively involved in making that event happen. And also thanks to Schoolhouse Farm and Beth's for the pumpkins they donated, and to Liberty Ice Cream for being there to dispense refreshments and ice cream to people, and to Morse's Sauerkraut and the Narrows Tavern for food and refreshment. And last but not least were the music makers. We had 3 groups there that performed music during the morning or late morning and early afternoon, and it was absolutely enjoyable. So thank you to everybody for helping make that a success. I did have a brief comment to make about the Efficiency Maine Trust program that Seth talked about earlier during the public comments. The Efficiency Maine Trust is funded by the money that VW had to pay during the diesel fiasco. That's where that money comes from. They are level 2 chargers, which means about 7.2 kilowatts of available electricity put in the vehicles. They They do like to have these located in publicly accessible locations. They don't have to be municipal property. It's probably better to have it as part of a gas station or a food area where you get a lot of people coming in and have more of a chance of actually getting an electric vehicle to charge there. The problem I have with it is that whoever does it has to upfront the costs. You get reimbursed after you've submitted invoices for all the costs you incurred. And they only cover up to 50% of the eligible costs. So up to a maximum of $5,000. So there's an issue here that I think would need to be sorted out at least with one more select board meeting if we had an interest in pursuing this on town property. And my own feeling is, if it's to be pursued, it ought to be done by a local business, and I'm enthused that Seth is interested in doing it. It should be a business enterprise and not something that requires allocations of scarce town resources to help accomplish. That's my take on it. Those are my 2 comments. Manners of report.
So, just to talk about we had our second forum, which was a review of the first, and I thought it was great. I actually did. People came back to hear what we had done so far and the results which had been distributed. I don't think it's any surprise that the concerns from the last forum were poverty, substance abuse, transportation, housing, and communication. So I spent some of the time at the beginning explaining those results, and then discussing some of the things that we've been doing. And one of those things that I think we could tackle right away were the communication issues, which you guys already started with the new website. So Wednesday was the forum, Thursday was the storm. What impressed me about the storm was I think it's the first time that we had a true presence on social media with posting up to the minute what was going on.
Excellent.
And we had a lot of positive comments. Interestingly enough, there was only 31 hits on the website about storm information, but there was over 3,000 on Facebook.
Wow.
So that to me showed that we have to have that social media presence, and I have to get better at the Facebook linking, and that will all happen with the new, so it'll all be able, I can post in one spot and it all
Post it
flies out, so that'll be great. So excited about that. The community navigator, Kathleen Arabaz from the BRCRC, Booth Bay Resource Council, was there and spoke about her role as a community navigator. And that is something that the select board really believes in. I believe that it's something we need in our community that will be able to get the proper resources to the people who need them the most. And I think that came through. And what I liked about what she said was it's not always poverty driven. Sometimes it's senior issues that need help. Sometimes it's poverty. Sometimes it's substance abuse. But we have to address this head on because it's one of the things that I believe truly, you can have all the economic development you want in the town, but if you don't have a community that can support that economic development, you're not gonna have a lot of success at that. So I think she did a great job of framing what the community navigator does. I also think that the health clinic based in the school, which Stacy Miller from Lincoln Health discussed, was a phenomenal thing to have come into Madomic Valley, where you actually have nurses there. You're going to have a social worker at some point there to help these kids, and I think that's amazing, and I think we have an amazing partner in Lincoln Health. Then we had Megan Hamlet from the YMCA and Cindy Wade from Lincoln Health discussing what the future looks like, and I think that was probably one of the best parts of that, aside from all the other great things, was talking about the partnerships and how important the partnership between Lincoln Health, Penn Bay, the town, the Y, and the Mid-Coast, I forget.
Community action?
Community Action, thank you. And Head Start is going to be, and the plan that is being formulated to address our needs as far as a community center, medical arts building, and things like that, all in one central location. So I walked away and I got so many wonderful comments and feedback from that meeting about where we're going, and I think that's really important. I know the recreation members who attended the recreation committee, they are chomping at the bit for their new assignment from the select board on how we want to proceed with that. Marcus went today and met with Megan at the Y, which was really good. So we're going to have those conversations and we're moving forward, but I thought it was a great gathering. What I have figured out thus far, just from just starting to take all of those questions that they had at the end and formulate, was where, when, how, and how do you pay for it? Typical questions. A lot of support for the community navigator came out of that meeting. A lot of support. How to fund that position, potentially through grants and churches and the town. But a lot of very thoughtful questions came out of it. So I was excited.
And I want to add that you've missed one important person who made presentations at that event, and that was Julie Kaiser. You were amazing, and you showed real leadership in setting out the issues and bringing people along and helping them to understand why all these pieces need to fit together. So, thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I'm very passionate about this, and I mean this when I say this. We are at a crossroads in Waldoboro, and we have to do this in a meaningful way. And I sit at a lot of the EDC meetings, and you've been there when I've flat out told how it is. In order for us to be a successful community, we have to deal with the problems that we face, and they are serious problems for serious people. And that is where we have to direct our resources, because you're not going to be able to be successful without addressing some of the issues that we face, and they're hard, and it is not an economic issue. I mean, drug addiction, alcohol addiction happens, and it doesn't matter how much money you have or how little you have. It's a crisis, and unless we're willing to stand up and say we need help dealing with it, and it's not a political issue for me. This is how do we move forward as a town? How do we raise up our kids so that the school system can provide the services and still make it at all affordable? And it's a labor of love, to be honest. So it makes it easy to be able to talk about it.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say that every one of those women who spoke, including Julie, they were such intelligent, dynamic women who saw a bigger picture and could see where all the pieces fit, and their planners there. It was very nice.
It is the best group that in my 30 years of municipal government, it is a true joy to meet with them, and it is the best group that I've ever had to work with to really be energized and move forward. They
They
really
were great.
And I think that's the one thing that Waldoboro has lacked over the years, is the ability to foster relationships that are outside of our community. And we need partners, and we need good partners to move it along.
Energizing.
Energizing it.
They are.
They definitely are. Sometimes it's one of those things that if you're lucky enough in a career to enjoy what you do, but then when you meet people of similar minds, it just
Passion.
makes it, and passions, it's so much easier. I'd like to think it's because we're all women too, but I'm gonna let that go.
Just happened that way, but
Just
wasn't it
happened that
good?
way, but it was good. Give a busy woman something to do and it'll get done really quickly because we're so busy. We have to
You're much better
multitask.
nurturers,
And we are much better
no
nurturers.
question. Yep. Any other comments? Okay. Consent calendar, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? Anything to read? All in favor? Okay. New business? Automatic aid agreement, I believe it's with Lincoln County. Did you want to comment on that?
It is. Lincoln County has a new, program that they've started with EMS, fire, and police. And this is just an agreement that basically agrees that we will all participate and play nicely. That kind of sums it up.
Yeah. They, to my understanding, they created or will create a new task force that would deal with emergencies.
Emergencies, yes. We have like a rapid response team and things like that, but this is a all-around
Yep.
emergency preparedness.
So do you need a motion
I just
on
need a
that?
motion to sign it.
to sign it? Is there a motion
So
to sign?
moved.
And Kyle did review it, just so you're aware.
Okay.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay. Fee schedule.
Max?
In your packets, you should have received a draft fee schedule. This is what the town uses right now for determining building permit fees for people who want to do either residential or non-residential construction in town. I was approached with this new update from Stan Waltz 2 weeks ago. He pointed out that the current draft schedule, the current fee schedule we have is nearing a decade old, which, to put that in perspective, I was still in middle school at that time. Or no, I think I was still high school at that
You're
time.
never allowed to say that.
I gotta emphasize how old this thing is. So Stan proposed some updates to it. And the most noticeable ones includes a special section for antenna arrays for $100 a piece. We have been doing that so far, but that has been more for what Stan has been doing, which is what other communities in the area have been doing as well. He just wants that in a more cemented location in town, so we're not just saying it's $100 by total, which I assume was the case, actually. So fortunately, Stan was back in time to point that out. The other update includes...
Right after that one.
The other update includes an increase in the new construction fees. Right now, for addition and residentials, the starting rate is $10 for addition and $20 for residential. Stan proposed upping those to $30 as a starting price. And then for cents per square foot, increasing additions from 10 cents to 15 cents, and then residential from 15 cents to 20 cents, so a nickel. And for renovations, starting price is at $30 plus the square feet you have right there. And I believe
What was it originally? The 10 again?
for renovations, $20 for residential, $25 for commercial. And then
Did you have a rationale for keeping them the same with this draft? At $30?
for renovations,
At $30 each? The
Uh,
square foot price is quite a bit more. It's probably double, but
that rationale actually came from nearby towns, for example.
That's what I figured.
The one that he gave me was the town of Damascotta, their fee schedule, which has an application fee of $30 for a starting price, plus, nope, that's accessories, $30 plus 25 cents a square foot. And then for residential accessories, again, $30 plus 10 cents a square foot. So we'd be the same as Damascotta on that. And then for commercial, it's $30 plus 30 cents a square foot. Whereas with us, it's $50.03 a square foot. The other changes, along with the antenna, septic-related ones. Minimum fee, we would be increasing that from $40 to $60. And then for additional fixtures, hook up to public sewer, and hook up to existing septic would go from $10 to $15. And then the last item that Stan wanted to include was relating to shoreland permits. First of all, increasing it from an additional $25 to $50, 50, and then including it after the fact specifically for shoreland permits. So if someone was to do something in a shoreland zone before getting their permit here, they would pay, originally it would have been twice the amount, but Stan is proposing either 3 times or 5 times. That's something he leaves up to the select board to decide. So those are the changes that Stan proposed.
Stan would be here, but he was not able to be here tonight.
Yes.
Typically, he would be.
So he would have been here.
I know.
Are there any questions?
Do you need like a public hearing on this before you do this, or?
I just wanted to bring this to the select board ASAP, just so you can say whether you like what's proposed or if there are certain things you want to change. For example, the after the fact, I would appreciate either the select board deciding whether you want the 3 times or 5 times the permit for something that's built in the shoreland zone.
And that's, if they're, basically, it's a fine of some sort, because
Yes,
they went
pretty
ahead and
much.
did it without
It'll be an ordinance.
getting anyone.
It would be an ordinance, and we'd have to go through that whole procedure, but before we got it too far down that line, we wanted
Yep.
to. And I just want to say, I thought it was great. This wasn't a Julie-inspired move. This was a Stan and Max-inspired move.
Oh, this wasn't even me. This
Oh,
was
okay, well, it was
Stan.
more of Stan, which I think is great, because in the past, sometimes the department heads have been leery about bringing things, and he just brought it, and I didn't even know about it until I actually saw it on the agenda, which I actually thought showed a lot of initiative, and I was quite pleasantly surprised, so it was a good thing. I'm not sure you agree with all the numbers, but
That's why I wanted to do this now. And I see people.
What would be the incremental revenue yield, would you estimate?
As in, if I was to predict how many dollars would already,
How many incremental dollars would this increase this yield to the town?
I would have to take what the previous year's number was and then just apply these figures first.
You know what that is?
I would not know that off the top of my head. That's something I will check into.
I think Stan did that. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here, so.
Yeah, a lot of, like, when this was being put on the select board's agenda, the big assumption was Stan would be here doing this with me, so he can answer all these questions.
That's-
It gives you something to look at, and we can prepare that and distribute that.
Yeah.
But are you in favor of
sense
at
is-
least proceeding?
The sentiment is supportive of what you're doing.
For the after the fact for shoreland, 3 times or 5 times. That's the main thing I need to
I'd go with 5 myself.
I don't know.
We can do 3 times if that's just if that's the more safer option that people would like to do, unless.
That,
Just a point of clarification, this is 3 times or 5 times if somebody does something in violation of the ordinance and then comes and asks for the permit, so basically a fine?
Correct. Let's say someone was to build a 10 by 10 shed in the shoreland zone, and they are caught and they need to pay. I think originally we'd be charging them about $100 for this, or I'm just gonna say in addition, that's a 10 by 10. So $100, but an after the fact would make it a $200 application instead.
As former chairman of the planning board, I would strongly encourage you to go with at least 5. If we want compliance, we have to make it hurt to violate. And frankly, 3 times, $300, you know, on a $10,000, $20,000 addition is nothing, it's noise. And as we know, people do it anyway and then just pay the fine. So I would strongly encourage at least 5, and please consider 10. It's still a small number.
It's probably premature without Stan being here, but is there a lot of violations in that?
Are there a
Does
lot
anyone know?
just happening in town?
Yeah,
Especially in the shoreline zone.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know some, yeah.
you do, yeah.
There
Oh,
is.
yeah.
There are,
Ongoings.
there are after the facts that do happen. Sometimes it's just when someone, funny enough, comes in to try and do an addition on this permit that they never did. There's actually a funny story about that, but I don't want to take up too much time here. So there are violations that do happen, and there are some that do happen in the shoreline.
Is this to get around it's easier to say you're sorry than ask permission?
Yes.
Kind of thing?
Beg for forgiveness than ask
Yes.
permission, yep.
Right,
Any further comments?
I agree.
I think you're still waiting for a 3 or 5.
Oh, no, I just needed to know if that was it.
Okay.
Oh,
So-
I agree with Bob with the 5.
I don't-
Present this next
I
time.
think we'll look at the whole picture once you put things together and come up with a revenue number. I mean,
Okay.
that'll help us.
I'll do a revenue number and compare 3 times to it 5 times.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much. Class action opioid lawsuit.
I just wanted to make you aware that we are part of a class action opioid suit against the pharmacological companies, pharmaceutical companies. We would have to opt out if we wanted to go out. I'm not sure why we would want to go out. There's no harm in staying in. If we ever decided, and I got guidance from MMA, if we ever decided to go out on our own and sue the big pharma, this doesn't preclude us from doing that. So it's just FYI. Lincoln County and Waldeboro are in this suit specifically.
This is the lawsuit in Ohio, and it was reported today that they've made a preliminary settlement with the government, not with the people who were hurt. That's another
Right.
whole bucket of fish, but just getting this done in the initial stage is an important milestone.
But I just wanted you guys to be aware of that.
Thank you. Action to discuss parking spaces. Michelle Burns?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michelle Burns, and I'm the general manager at New Taction, doing business as Ansonet. And we currently relocated to the 251 Jefferson Street professional building.
Sorry, Michelle, what are you doing business as?
Ansonet,
Answernet?
yes.
Thank you.
Yes. I first want to say how happy I am to have come back home. I missed Waldeboro. I have 30 employees, and I'm looking to hire 10 to 50 more within the next 30 days, hopefully. And I'm here tonight to discuss my concerns about parking. The first place is across the building, across the road from the building, there are 12 parking spaces. They currently have a 2-hour limit on them, which means I cannot utilize any of them at all. I'm 24/7, 365. I never close regardless of the weather, it doesn't matter. My agents work in 8-hour shifts as a rule, 8 to 10 hours. So I can't use those spaces at all. So I'd like to ask you to consider opening up 4 to 5 of those 12 just to all the time parking. I'm not asking that you make them specific to my employees, but just allow us to be able to use 1 or 2 of them, especially my night crew. You know, it's really uncomfortable for them to come out at night in the back parking lot with 1 street light at 11, 12, 1 a.m. all alone to get in their car. So I am asking that you consider, if we aren't able to do that, if we could take the time restriction off at 5 p.m. so at least my night crew could park there with no issues, and when they come out at night, they're in a well-lit, highly visible area directly in front of the building. My other concern is at snow time and the back parking lot. I understand that is plowed at the very last minute. It's the last thing that gets plowed, and I'm asking you to reconsider that. We do park out back there, and it's hard for us to get in and out if it's not plowed. Even if it's just broken out, I don't mean completely spotless, but if some of the spaces could just be broken out a little bit to allow my employees to park, that would be great.
I do
Yes.
have a question regarding the snow removal.
Yes.
If your folks are parked there during the storm and snow is collecting, kind of hard to plow and not hit their vehicles, or to plow thoroughly because the vehicles are in the way.
My employees would be more than happy to move, park it all in once, whatever we need to do to make it easy for I was in the building for 18 years prior to moving to Rockland, and that's what we did in the past. We could see the lights from the, the plow truck coming in, so my employees would get up and take turns moving around if need be. We're also willing to park at the top of the stairs, at the staircase, but currently there's bushes that have grown across, so we can't get up through there right now. And I would be very concerned, again, wintertime, the snow and ice on those stairs, my employees going up and down those stairs if they're not maintained. So, yes.
You used to have a card, this little orange sticker, to stick in the front of the car if you were a Taction employee, so that whoever was
You knew who was
doing
who.
the run, so they knew that they were employees, and if they were,
Mhm.
they could get in. Are you still doing that?
No, but I'd be happy to do that if that would be helpful.
Well, I didn't know if that would help in those parking spots, if the police knew that they were Taction people.
Possibly.
John says it wouldn't.
John, do you have any input?
You know where to get them to move them.
There is 12 parking spaces, right across from them. I think we should pull the 2-hour packet out of that. That was for a hairdresser that only lasted a short period of time, and on the recommendation of one selectman. So that should be changed.
All of them, all the spaces? All of them?
There's no other business than that, right? Right in that area.
Yeah.
The only other tenants in the building would have like one client at a time.
This would allow for them to park at night. Also, as far as the cool parking lot, the parking lot, which is down back, it is the last parking lot that we do. It really is. If we have breakdowns, they won't even get done.
But I think if we alleviate up in front of the building, that would help quite a bit
Yes.
down back.
Yes.
That would
So
help.
if you
right
took
there.
all 12 spaces off,
Particularly the night.
And
especially the night crew, yeah.
up above in the upper parking lot, I'd rather, not have them parked there. The reason is that parking area is already full. We got a lot of people from Sammy Cohen's office in there, we got people from the hairdressers in there, and also some people who work right on Friendship Street parking there, so it'd be kinda too bad to put them out of the way. I think you have sufficient parking. There's also parking across and back to Teddy Whistler's. This is how we worked it before. I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's just the same thing as it was before. And we get this when we get, that's the only thing I can do. Our main purpose is the roads, unless you guys want to set a parking lot division. But I treat them like I would a town office. And the town office, I don't treat any different than the roads.
No, you don't.
Who owns the parking lot behind Teddy Worcester's?
Teddy Whistler.
So I would need to speak to him for permission to park.
Yeah, and that's why there's a crosswalk across from Leah and Teddy Worcester's, the boom parking lot.
I know in previous years he charged us, so.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't think it's really be too much of an issue. Yeah, the only thing is in the wintertime, people try to make it up the hill when they leave that home parking lot. I can't even make it up the hill, and I have a four-wheel drive. You gotta go down over the hill,
Correct.
and I think that was most of the complaints that I had before, between that and the sidewalk.
Going down the hill. Okay.
That's where people should go.
Okay.
Get around from the other hill, but anything else, still gonna be business as usual, We'll treat you the same as we always did.
Okay.
That's the only thing we can do.
And that requires an ordinance change? Or does it?
I don't think it's an ordinance.
For the parking,
The parking on that,
for the
which I
parking
did look into
limit.
this, yeah,
That was the limit thing.
for a 2-hour thing, I really don't think that, it was an ordinance
don't
No,
think it was an ordinance.
I don't think it was at all.
We just need to take down the
No, yeah.
signs.
We just need to take down the signs to get permission.
That opens it up to everyone.
Right.
Okay.
I was just curious if 12 spots would cover your night staff, and you said you had 30 employees, I just was just.
12 would cover my night staff, yes. 30 and 4, but that's rotated
Yeah, that's what I
through the
figured.
24, so yes. 12 would be more than efficient, yes.
I guess I have to happily admit that I sort of maybe created this problem. I know the parking problem, and I don't regret that. Well, we all know we're parking constrained downtown. It's gonna be an increasing problem as things pick up. I have another 8 tenants on the second floor of the building who see clients, psychologists, who vote for women and so forth. I think I would recommend we don't take all 12. I would suggest that closest to the south end of the parking lot, or the stairway, perhaps we leave 4 with 2-hour parking. And again, time limited at 5 PM. I don't think anyone, well, I know some people come at 6 for evening appointments, but there would be plenty of parking for that. I think that would be perhaps a little more efficacious and fair disposition of those signs. I have absolutely no problem with 8. I think that would cover you at night pretty much, at least in the short term.
Short term,
I really think
very short term.
we're offering this and working out, we leave it open, first come, first serve, and go from there. Because there's at least 2, if not 3 parking spaces right by the building. On the other side of the building, there's also some parking there.
Yeah, the gallery's closed in the wintertime.
Yeah, that's right, so this way here, I won't hear no complaining, oh, he's parked in my spot. I'm not gonna deal with that very well, so I said leave it open.
Not gonna deal with that very well.
Question on ownership. So the gallery owns that parking area, correct?
Yes.
Closes
So
it
how
off.
can the town say that somebody else can just?
We can't.
Yeah,
okay.
there are other parking
Yeah, there are
spaces
parking spots.
right next to the
Okay.
building.
I was thinking of on Main Street as well.
Yeah.
There are places on Main Street
Yeah.
in front of the gallery. Seth?
Just an additional piece of information, something that came up at the request of management at Anjanette. We're going to be designating both of our parking spots that go with the building, the 2 on the very steep edge, right next to the front door, as handicapped. I've already discussed this a bit with John. We're gonna be putting up handicap signs and handicapped painted emblems on the floor. So that actually isn't available except for handicapped people, and that's in part to help with some of the staff at Internet. It's also to make it easier for the clients on the second floor. So those won't be general parking anymore unless you have a handicap sticker. I hope within a month that'll happen.
Any more comments or suggestions?
I just want to make sure everyone understands it. When that's open to everyone, so if,
Yep.
not just employees.
Do we need a motion about that?
Agree, 100%.
I would.
Yeah, okay.
Just to make it
I
part
would
of the
just do it.
record, I think
Yeah.
it would be
Make a
helpful.
motion, we take down the 2-hour parking on the town-owned parking spaces across from the professional office building
Is there a second?
on Jefferson Street.
On Jefferson, is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Seth?
John, don't sit down.
Just as point of informational reference, that building is now officially legally called the Bug Tussle Annex, and it's owned by a separate LLC called the Bug Tussle Annex LLC. So it's no longer the Taction Building, and it's no longer the Jefferson Street Professional Building. As a landmark, we haven't decided to take down the sign, but
Okay.
many people know about the professional.
Bug
Okay,
tussle.
thank you.
That's good.
Thank you.
Parking spaces and crosswalks along Jefferson Street.
Come
and
on up,
Friendship
John.
Road and Main
Huh?
Street.
Something to do with digging.
This one.
I gave them their maps.
Insects.
Oh, you did?
Yep, you got it right here.
Just mark it up.
Of course, right now, in town, there's no crosswalks, parking areas marked out, or anything else. But, ordinances. And we do need to move a few parking spaces. Some people aren't gonna be happy, but that's the way it is, it's for safety, and there is laws. Considering on Friendship Street, supposed to be a minimum of 20 feet away from the crosswalk.
Is that state or town?
That is state.
That's state.
Yeah.
Yep, it gets
Yeah.
better.
But the town adopted that. It's in their policy. We do have policies, ordinances.
Yep.
The town adopted that.
20 or 30?
20.
Okay.
They adopted 20, but on the other side of the road, on Jefferson Street by Sam Cohen's building, they adopted 30.
Is those in front of Sam's building or on
Jefferson
Jefferson?
Street.
On Jefferson. There's only one space there.
Yep. And it was
Okay.
adopted, it was 30 feet away from the intersection. Now, we've had issues in the past. We have people parking right on that corner, right by the drugstore, and people just can't see. People heading up over the hill, up over Main Street, it's the same way. You have cars parking right by the stop sign. They shouldn't be. Really got issues there. We also got issues with hydrants. It's supposed to be parked 10 feet away from a hydrant. It's not happening. Now would be the time where everything's blank to go in and make the changes.
Perfect time.
Like I said, our policy ordinance says 20 feet. I think that we could do away with the crosswalk in the middle of the block, which is not a legal crosswalk. That goes from the drugstore to Sproul Block. Do away with that. That would gain me another 5 feet, so we could get 30 feet. Or we could stick with 20.
The issue, and Sprawl Block is unhappy because that's not a
Yeah.
handicap curb cut, but the
Yep.
state won't allow a handicap curb cut there because it's a mid-block crosswalk. And if you've ever driven there, when people decide to walk out between two trucks, it gets a little dicey. They really need to either go up to the corner or down to the other corner.
So if we go by our own rules or extra rules, it would do away with one of the parking spaces in front of Sammy Cohen, the one that we have for just cars only. It would do away with that one. It would do away with the one by the stop sign by the Sproul Block. And it would do away with the first one there by the drugstore.
Does this diagram show what you would like to see, or does it show what we have?
The diagram,
Shows what he
the
would
yellow
like to
shows
see.
the 30 feet.
Yellow.
Okay, that's what you want to see.
I don't know. I don't know if we can get that through. I would like to see it, but I don't know if we can make that work. I think there might be problems
So
down there.
220 is a state road, it's not even under our jurisdiction, is it?
The parking is,
The
Parking
parking
is.
is, okay.
parking is.
So when you say you want, you might not get it through, whom might you not get it through with?
I think that you might have issues with some of the store owners.
Ah, okay.
I just, and we just have to be mindful. It's a public safety issue.
Yep.
It's, you know, we've got to abide by our own ordinances.
Yep.
And we haven't been.
Would it be helpful to sit with the store owners and explain to them, rather than just do it? To explain to them why it's important and why it's necessary to do?
You guys can do that.
Fair enough.
I'm serious. I
Yeah,
mean,
no,
It was the store owners that talked to the selectmen that made these changes. It didn't have anything to do with me, it just said, oh, we gotta add one here.
Well, you need to be involved, John.
I wasn't before.
Well,
Now he
you're
is.
gonna be this time.
If you want me to be, yeah.
I mean, from a legal standpoint, we have to conform to our own ordinance.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer.
This is a crosswalk right here? It's a half a crosswalk.
It's probably a half a crosswalk.
Yeah, that goes from the bottom of the stairway over to Taction Building, I
Correct.
think.
That was an approved crosswalk. This one is not an approved crosswalk.
Right,
The one
but-
with the red across it is
But then,
not.
are there the 30 feet from that, or 20 feet from that? There aren't yellow lines there,
Oh, you don't have to be.
just in the town?
Yeah, I think crossing.
If you're gonna have parking on that side, there's no parking on that side,
Yeah, here? See, that's
on the
where
side of
park-
that road. Not
Yeah.
where not for a parking lot, but it's from a corner,
But,
Okay, it's from the corner, is
right,
where it
and
has to be
corner and
the 20
the
feet?
crosswalk, right.
Okay,
so
And that
the
doesn't
other
apply.
problem that we're having down there.
This is good.
Anyways, the other problem we're having down there, it's only 1 hour parking. Doesn't matter who you are.
downtown?
Yep.
Oh, really?
I wasn't aware of that.
I wasn't either.
Wow. We have signs on the buildings. It's also ordinance. But people are complaining, and some of them are the store owners who are parking up there.
Yep.
And then they come to the town and complain, and they complain about parking.
Well, they're
I don't
taking
know.
spaces.
But, so that's, so that means you, Seth, you better park back, go parking.
So is there a time frame on that, or is that for 24 hours, the 1
Another
hour?
time frame from that, from morning till 6 o'clock at night.
Okay, but I was wondering how, like, the restaurant, people go in to eat and
There's
stuff.
a sign right there, just
Yeah.
like doing a restaurant.
Yeah.
Right on the big building.
It never gets violated.
What, people go?
But
that.
this is what's going
Yeah.
on, and like I said, I hear
Yeah.
more and more about it, and I think now's the time.
Especially since there's no lines making that turn, because the people follow that swipe,
Yeah.
and it gets a little dicey
It
now.
does.
Really does.
It is.
We are getting complaints now.
Especially lately, just the last few weeks I've heard.
That corner's a bad one, for sure.
It's a bad corner anyway, but especially
one?
since the state just made that
Yeah,
white
sure,
line
yeah.
takes you too close to the,
Yeah, it used to be the handicap parking spot.
yeah, it's getting a little
Yeah.
dicey there.
Seth?
A couple of additional maybe concerns that
Mhm.
John brings up. If we put a crosswalk across from the library, as we've been discussing with the post office, and make that a legal crosswalk. Well, that would reinforce the suggestion I made. If we had to have 20 feet going up the hill, that I'm sure Cat Scove would approve, that would greatly improve the sight line for people pulling out of the library, coming down the hill. Something to think about. And I don't know if it's a legal crosswalk in front of my building, that is at the base of the stairs. I didn't know if that was or not.
That actually is one. That is legal. That's probably the only legal mid-block crosswalk in town.
So be aware that that wipes out 2 parking spots on the public across the street. That would be 20 feet, will wipe out 2 of those spots.
No.
Because
No,
'cause
that's,
It's
from
not
the
an
corner.
intersection.
it's not an
Oh, not
intersection.
intersections, so it
Right,
doesn't count.
right.
Oh, great. Good, okay.
The post office one, I hear a lot about that one. That is a legal crosswalk. One of the reasons that it was put there was Postmaster General asked the town, because people were packing on the post office side, and people coming out of the post office couldn't see either way. They came in and asked the town about that. Now, as far as the area for where the crosswalk is, if you notice, just above the library, people have been widening that out, and you get usually about 3 people parking there. And that is why the crosswalk is there. It really doesn't make sense to bring this crosswalk to the other side of the library driveway, so people get out of their cars there, and they cut across, and then I'd have to dump them into Hall's Funeral Home in their driveway to make it right straight across there. So I know there's been a lot of talk about that. There again, I wasn't involved.
Thank you
And
for
then
that
Postmaster
explanation.
General from Post Office asked the town to do it.
And they still park on it, right in front of that mailbox, and you can't see a thing coming out of there. I sit and wait, and then do this.
I know, but it's kind of difficult,
Yeah,
so,
it is.
yeah.
Another clarification, in front of the movie and pizza shop.
Yep.
Is there any point in considering allowing parking there? Right now, there are no lines painted on the road there.
Right.
And I didn't know if there couldn't be, because of clearance issues. That would potentially add 2 more parking spots while we're taking some away in the immediate vicinity.
You could, but we'd probably have to get an agreement with the landowner
Okay.
on that. That's how it was done, with Cohen's building, at the time. These agreements go way back, so.
So the town can't just put a parking spot the way it is on Friendship Street in front of businesses without the agreement of the owner of the
Right.
property?
Right.
Including for the Narrows and the Slip Shop?
Include Narrows, including in front of Freddie Stores, where his new addition's going. 'Cause I already talked to him, asked him about that, and, he's undecided, so.
Well, my suggestion is that we do this accurately
Okay.
and submit it to the powers that be, whether it's just this board or the planning board that has to get involved.
No,
Certainly
it's
your
just-
department,
it's-
it's just us.
All it is him
Yep.
following the ordinance we
Right.
have.
They have the, no,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, then I guess we
But
reinforce.
You need to know this.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you do.
It's gonna cause problems.
That's what's happened in the past, is somebody's come in and previous select boards have said, oh, that's nice, yes, let's be nice, but we have to be accurate. We have to follow our own rules.
Yep.
For this, for sure.
So you're happy with this?
I am happy with this. I think it would be legal. I do have an issue with the hydrant. And,
Which hydrant?
down by the lawyer's office.
Well, that's state law, we have to follow that.
I know, but we got a parking right next to it.
Well, they can't.
Yeah.
We'll have to have that conversation with him.
What we might do is stripe out areas that prohibit parking. Just say, no parking, stripes, blah, whatever it is, and make it clear that
We,
cars aren't allowed there.
we used to do that, and we just paint them yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, somebody complained, said it was unsightly.
Too bad.
We stopped doing it.
Again.
Yep.
It's the normal way we do what you used to do, John.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. It's
Good.
10 feet on both sides of a hydrant?
Yeah.
Is that, okay.
Yeah, right in your ordinance.
No, I was just curious.
Yep. Right in
Yeah.
there.
How big is a parking spot?
How many feet? Church.
Usually we try to get them 8 by 20, but most people, most younger people can back into 8 by 18, no problem, but for some of us older people, you know, we have smaller cars.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Water Department Committee recommendation.
That's good.
The Water Committee, the Water Department Committee voted unanimously to recommend to this board 3 immediate options regarding the Water Department in priority order. That's how the motion was worded. One was to stay with the current Water Department Committee and have the committee draft a new contract or amendments to the existing main water contract and have that subject to select board approval. That's the first suggestion, and I think the most acceptable suggestion that was made. The second possibility would be to transfer the water department's assets to the utility district and to define the terms of the transfer. So move it over to utility district, they take over, they may hire the same company that's doing the work now, they may go out and do something else, but that's another option. And the third one would be to write, to write an RFP to solicit proposals from pre-qualified bidders to purchase the water department's assets.
The first option, though, also included that the water committee stay in place
That's right.
as an advisory committee who focuses strictly on water. So that's not that you're giving up any authority as the select board, but it's a committee of concerned people who can help keep an eye on that ball while our eyes are on everything else. So that was an important part of
That
that
was very
first
important, thank you. Yep.
option.
So, we don't have to do anything tonight. They just wanted you to know that this is sort of what they've been thinking. And if you have a sentiment about one of those three options, maybe you tell us what it is.
I like that first option.
You like the first one?
Yeah.
Janet?
Yeah.
Yep.
Them people are a wealth of knowledge.
It's a really good
I will
committee.
tell you, when I started this process, I wanted nothing to do with it. After sitting down with them, and I think that Mike, is it Mike?
Like there.
Mike Thayer?
Yeah.
Mike Thayer really helped, because this is what he's done for so long.
His email address is
Sludgy. That gave me just a much higher confidence level, and I expressed that to the water committee, was somebody who knows what's going on. And we had a great committee too, because Delia was on there, and
Yep.
she was on the select board
history,
with a lot of, she came with a lot of history, so we have a really good, and we have Arvin who watches the money, so it's all good.
So I'm gathering that the sentiment is to keep it and tweak it and make it better than it is.
But it would be great if you could just re-up and make that a permanent committee or advisory board. I think that would be wonderful if you could do that.
The suggestion was we do that after we've recommended a contract
Correct.
to the board. Yeah. Okay.
So just so they know, they're tasked with
Right.
the agreement.
And what I'm hearing is the consensus is to go with option number one. Okay, I'll report that to them. Old business. We tabled a motion at our last meeting regarding the 80 Gray Subcommittee Communications Protocol.
Point of order, there's one more piece of new business.
No, we scratched
No, we
it.
scratched that.
Oh, sorry.
You weren't here.
I was late,
We
sorry.
postponed it, we didn't
Yes, we
scratch
didn't
it.
scratch it, we just.
Sorry, we
I
postponed it
scratched
to our
mine.
first meeting in November. Sorry. So there was a discussion that was tabled regarding communications between the subcommittee and the developer. And I'm not gonna move to untable that motion. My motion will be to restate it in a slightly different way. And the motion I'm making is that moved that all written 80 Gray Subcommittee communications shall have distribution limited strictly to subcommittee members. Contacts with the developer/investor group concerning contractual issues, verbal or written, shall be undertaken only through the offices of Waldeboro's town manager and/or Waldeboro's planner. That's the motion.
Okay, so,
I'm sorry, I'm just looking for a
Yeah.
second, if there's a second.
oh, okay.
Did somebody give a motion?
I made the motion, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm just looking for a second to that motion.
I'll second it just for discussion.
Thank you, okay. Discussion.
Okay, is part of that all written communication will go to all of the subcommittee members?
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
part of it, so,
you would share what you know and what you have, and what your
Yeah.
questions are.
Okay.
Absolutely.
okay. And contractual, you mean just information on what we're going over, the contract?
The contract.
Yeah.
Unless it's a procedural, when are we meeting, what time, where, and so forth.
Okay, so it's limited, that motion is limited to contractual stuff.
And the reason is that the subcommittee itself has a very limited mission, and that is to, if possible, figure out a contract. And
Contract.
and bring it to the board.
Right, right.
That's the only thing we're gonna be doing.
I wasn't sure what to say to Tim when I saw him the other night, or whether to speak to him. But I did, say hello, thank you.
Any further discussion? Abden's thinking.
Oh, I'm just making sure the town office is fine with this.
Read through it again. Just
Move
it's
that
a
all
lot.
written AD grade subcommittee communications shall have distribution limited strictly to subcommittee members.
Could you put including all
To all, yeah, I don't mind putting that in there. Then we'll have to amend the motion, but
What about the rest of the select board?
I think we should, because they're gonna be voting on this, and Jan and I are gonna be voting on it too,
Well, that's the point.
which makes me a little uncomfortable. I mean, to approve something at the subcommittee level and then come to the board and say we've approved
Well, you're
this.
not approving it, you're recommending it.
Recommending it,
Right,
but
right.
we're, you know, there's a process or procedure there that seems to me to be a little delicate. That's all. If you feel we need to share with other select board members, and it's done in protection of the town's negotiating position, because that's the whole point of this, then there shouldn't be a problem with that. But this is subcommittee communications. It doesn't concern communications with the select board. You're on that committee. So is Max. I mean, if there are things that need to be brought to the board, they will be brought to the board.
Right.
So. Yeah, but to me, it's all about protecting the position of the town, the negotiating position of the town. That's the most important.
So if it's
purpose of this thing.
executive session, privileged information.
Yep.
Only.
Yep.
If it's what color should AD gray be painted, that's not privileged.
That's something we talk about.
But that's not privileged.
Well, there is
Maybe it is under certain
where's that page?
circumstances. I don't know the answer to that. That's why it's important to keep it in the subcommittee.
Well, I think the color of the building, I'm sure would have to go to the planning board to
Probably
get approved
would.
first.
Have to match on the
So,
neighbors.
so
But
it's
no,
really
but
won't be.
I'm playing devil's advocate here, that's my,
But you're selecting an issue that we would be talking about at the subcommittee level. This
Right.
is a public issue that would be discussed.
but
in
that's
public.
what, I need to make that distinction, is that there's things that I could see staying within that realm, and other things that, you're leaving that up to me, is basically what you're doing. Okay.
Well, there's a qualifier in the real estate executive session. I think Alex put it in the paper last week, he added the qualifier.
There are actually
the
two
rest of it,
qualifiers.
yeah.
Try to
Yeah.
think of them both. It does. it
Economic
deals with
development
Economic
and-
development, which this is, and contract negotiations, which this is.
Well,
For-
So
no,
it qualifies
property.
under both qualifiers.
well, the other part I was talking about is if it would harm the town, that part. I know in the past when we deal
If it would
with,
harm our position, it's for the acquisition
can't
and sale
remember
of
that.
property.
yeah, I can't remember that exact rule, but I read it in it. In the past, when we've had them in executive session, they've been where the public has had no knowledge of that, knows nothing. This one is a little bit different, since there have been 2 public meetings about it. That was just my concern, to make sure that we're, maybe to talk about, and maybe we could discuss at some point what about that would be harmful to the town.
Well,
I mean,
I
it
think
has been
this
an
is
issue in the
strictly
past, I
to
don't
the
know.
contract negotiations.
Right.
and it's an economic development issue, it's both. We're talking jobs here, we're talking
Yeah,
a lot of different stuff. And you don't want rumors flying around. You just don't. Nobody's gonna be helped by that. And you're putting out fires and you're tracking down rumors that mean nothing.
Okay, but we can't, but
That's-
see, this
yeah,
is where
that's
you
not
lose
work.
me.
Yeah,
This is
not
totally
us.
where you lose
Yeah.
me. You can't stop the rumor mill,
Right.
so that's
you
not what
can't.
this is about. This
Right.
is strictly about not,
It's protecting the town.
it's protecting our negotiations so that no one gets an unfair advantage. So that, but I think I like that.
Yeah, that's what it's about.
Mhm.
You can't, you're right, you can't stop rumors. I've
You
heard them all
can't.
over the place.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
People will
Apparently,
say what they want to say.
I didn't realize that I was married to Tim Wells.
Really?
Yes!
Wow.
Who knew?
Does he know?
No!
These modern marriages.
I'm telling ya. Not my type, but hey. But no, so I think that has to be that, so I just wanna make sure that it's not about rumors, it's about
No,
The
it's
actual
about
negotiation.
The substance of the
the
document we're
substance
considering
of
as
the
a subcommittee.
negotiations, okay.
It's what we're looking at and discussing with one another. That's all it is. Seth?
Just two questions. I think I understand pretty clearly the need under real hard contract negotiations to keep things quiet and controlled, for all the obvious reasons. I don't have a problem with that at all. What I am concerned about, as I expressed last meeting, is that other subjects that should be in the public eye might somehow be obscured by too rigid a rule about disseminating the committee's activities. As I pointed out last time, no other committee in this town, I think, no other board, including yours, except for your executive sessions, has the right or ability to withhold committee meeting minutes from the public. And I would want to make sure somehow we just kept that very, very clean. And I don't know that that wouldn't happen in this case. It sounds like I like this motion much better than the one that you are declining to untable. I guess the second question would be, are you willing to withdraw your previous motion, assuming that this will cover the principal concerns you had in the last motion? That seems a sensible conclusion. Tell me if I'm wrong.
I'm just gonna leave it tabled and it'll stay there ad infinitum. No point even discussing it. This is the motion that's on the table now. I'm not gonna move that we untable the one we tabled. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's gone. And it wouldn't make sense to do so anyway, because this is the one that.
So we're just following the law. When we can be an executive, we're gonna be an executive.
Yeah.
And that's privileged, and when we're not an executive, that's not privileged.
It'll be on camera.
I got you. I have much more comfortability with that.
Okay.
Remove the vote, please. I wanna move on.
I'm sorry?
Can we move to vote?
If you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. So we've amended the motion
Mhm.
to include the word all subcommittee members.
Can you just say it again, Bob?
Yeah.
Just so you know.
I'm gonna reread it, and actually, I'm gonna ask you to withdraw your second.
I did, I was just saying.
Okay, would you withdraw your
Yes.
second? I'm withdrawing the motion. I'm reading the revised motion now, so we're all clear. Move that all written 80 Gray subcommittee communications shall have distribution limited strictly to all subcommittee members. Contacts with the developer investor group concerning contractual issues, verbal or written, shall be undertaken only through the offices of Waldeboro's town manager and/or Waldeboro's town planner. That's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Last item I have is an agenda, before the executive session, is an agenda for the items for the next meeting. And I do suggest one myself, and that is we need to talk about our meeting schedule in December. Because we only have one meeting on the 11th, the 24th is Christmas Eve. And we have to figure out whether we want 2 meetings in December or 1. That's the first.
Would you say one, Julie? Yeah, I would say one is.
Okay.
It's the holidays.
Okay, well, we'll discuss
Happy
it then.
holidays, may your every wish come true.
I take that back.
The day job,
I'm not gonna give up my day job.
the gazebo project.
Gazebo project, yeah.
What happened to the fireworks? Is Paul out of town again or
No, he was here, but then it got tabled because we had so much to do and it's 7:30, and that would have been a whole nother half-hour discussion.
Oh,
I'm not gonna put fireworks on with any AD grant discussions.
That won't be voted on until next June anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah, we have
Got a
time.
while.
we have time.
Well, we can add that.
Anything else
just
you'd
to
like
get
to
it
see
over
on?
with.
Fireworks, add that, just to get it
Fireworks.
over with.
Okay.
I like that idea.
Anything else?
Personnel policy.
Yep.
No one's
Oh.
given me, except for Bob, their comments on the personnel policies that I gave you to review last time. So just,
I'm still reading.
okay, so just get them to me when you have a chance,
Okay.
and I can meld them all together and make them coherent thoughts.
Is there a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Is pursuant to
Second.
4056F. That would be the motion.
Good night, John.
Is there a second?
Second.
All
Good
in
night,
favor?
Peg. Good night, Ruben.
Okay, we're in executive session.
Check some of the wording of the last
You
couple
wanna
of
take
motions. Yeah,
picture?
just, yeah, there was the 80 grand, the water, the first
Right
water
there.
committee one, that was already.